Do you, Leah Williams, take this man? She wanted to scream no, to bolt from this gilded cage, but her mother's frail hand squeezed hers from the wheelchair, a silent beg she couldn't betray. I do, she whispered. And do you, Mr. Yu Unji, take this woman? A pause long, sharp, like a blade hovering. I do. His voice was low, smooth, laced with shadows. The first time she'd heard that timbre since that forgotten night, it stirred something deep, but her mind couldn't grasp it yet. By the power vested in me, you may lift the bride's veil. Her breath snagged. His fingers grazed the lace, slow and deliberate, time fractured. Her heart slammed to a halt, her gut twisted. It wasn't a stranger. It was him. Hey, the man who'd whispered her name like a forbidden vow in the dark, his tattooed skin burning against hers before he vanished with the dawn. Now taller, sharper, more lethal, his boyish mystery hardened into a Mafia heir's icy poise, the dragon ink curling up his neck like a warning. If you're just tuning into Korean dynasty stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more heart-racing tales of forbidden love and underworld twists. Comment below. Where are you watching from? And has fate ever thrown you a curveball like this? Now, sit back, relax, and let the shadows pull you in as we dive right into the story. Leah sat by the window of her cramped Seoul apartment, her chin on her palm as the city blurred past neon signs flickering like false promises, crowds surging with lives that felt worlds away from her own. Sometimes she wondered why she'd stayed in Korea, this land that swallowed her Jamaican roots whole. Maybe because escaping never fixed the grief, the bills, or the ache of being forever the outsider. Her mother, the woman who'd brought her here for a better life, had given everything to make her feel anchored. But Leah still drifted like a ghost in her own story. Her adopted home treated her with fleeting kindness, yet she could never confess the weight she carried: the hospital vigils, the double shifts, the fear that clung like humid island rain. When she came home exhausted, bruises from the day's grind hidden under her sleeves, she'd force a smile. Just tired, she'd say. Or, long shift. Her mother would nod, worry etching her face, and Leah would turn away before the questions came. It was simpler to bury the pain than to burden the one person she had left. Now at 24, she should have been building dreams, but dreams felt like whispers she'd only overheard. Her days were a silent war cafes that drained her spirit, nights that echoed too loudly, and a heart that wouldn't forget that one reckless escape. Sometimes she still felt his touch in her dreams, the stranger's calm fire, the tattoo that mapped secrets on his skin. No matter the months, that night lingered under her surface, a reminder that some flames never died. They just waited to ignite. She drew a shaky breath, rubbing her temples. Just another shift, she murmured to the empty room. By the time she unlocked her door that evening, the city had turned stormy. The chill slapped her like a warning. Her phone buzzed the instant she stepped inside, making her pulse jump. Calls from the hospital were rare, and when they came, they shattered worlds. She hesitated, then answered. Mom? Leah. The nurse's voice was low, strained, as if she'd rehearsed bad news. Her stomach dropped. What's wrong? Silence stretched. She heard the beep of machines in the background. Your mother's bills. They're past due. We can't continue treatment without payment. Her chest constricted. What kind of payment? The nurse sighed. The full amount, or we'll have to discharge her. The room spun. Mom, no, she whispered, her voice cracking. Tell me there's time. We gave you warnings, Leah. I'm sorry. The call ended, leaving her in suffocating quiet. Leah gripped the counter, knuckles white. Her mother, the woman who'd fled Jamaica for hope and soul, had collapsed months ago, her illness a thief stealing their future. Bills had piled like debts from a past life. Desperation had driven Leah to that private event job, the one that paid too well to question. She hadn't known it tied to the U-Clan, Korea's whispered nightmare of crime and power. And now, they'd come calling in their own way. Her phone rang again days later, this time from an unknown number. Answer it, a voice inside urged. Or run. She swiped, heart thundering. Hello? Leah Williams? The man's tone was cold, clipped. We have a proposition for your family's situation. Her breath hitched. Who is this? A representative of the U Syndicate. Your late father owed us. We've been patient. Her body iced over. Everyone in Seoul knew that name, the U Mafia. Lords of shadows, trafficking secrets and fear. Drugs, deals, empires built on blood. And her father had tangled with them? Dad, no, she said, voice rising. He's gone. This isn't mine. It is now, he replied flatly. There's a way to clear it. Her whisper trembled. What way? The heir wants to marry you? The world tilted. Leah's lips parted, soundless. What? Marry you, Unji, and the debt vanishes. Your mother's care continues. Everything's secured. Her pulse roared so loud she thought she'd collapse. You're insane. You think I'll just hand myself over to a mafia boss like some collateral? The man chuckled, devoid of warmth. Think of it as fate's mercy. You have 3 days. She sank against the wall, tears burning. Her father's hidden sins driving for the syndicate, vanishing with accusations of theft, had caught up. She'd run from loss all her life. The grief of Jamaica, the isolation in Korea, the voices calling her foreigner, outsider. But this? No escape. You said he's the heir, she whispered shakily. What's he like? The man paused. Cold, the kind men don't defy. Leah's breath shook. She ended the call, burying her face in her hands. Outside, the storm raged, pounding the glass like judgment. She sat for hours, shattered yet defiant. Memories of that passionate night flickered his whispered secrets, the dragon tattoo alive under her fingers. She'd vowed never to let fate chain her again, never to surrender her fire. And now destiny demanded she wed it. The next days blurred in agony, but when the deadline hit, her mother's eviction notice sealed it. Sometimes survival looks like surrender. If this kept her alive, she'd pay even if it scorched her soul. Her phone rang at dawn. The call was brief. Be ready. A voice like ice commanded. The ceremony's at noon. No warmth, no choice, just decree. By the time they arrived for her, she was clad not in joy, but in silk, a gown that clung like chains, embroidered with pearls that gleamed under shadowed light. A veil shrouded her face, thick and oppressive. She wondered if it was to mask her terror or her rage. 2 black cars idled outside, engines humming like threats. No words on the drive. The men in suits stared ahead, faces stone. She felt their judgment through the windows, through the silence crushing her lungs. She balled her fists, steadying her breath. It's just a nightmare, she told herself. Fight through. But every street, every hum of the engine, every ticking second, screamed reality. They halted before a sprawling estate. Not a chapel, but a fortress of marble and gold. It reeked of opulence, dragon motifs etched in every arch. Guards in black patrolled, hands on hidden steel. Inside, it smelled of white roses and veiled menace. Soft strings played as she was guided down the aisle. The guests, 30 or 40, faces sharp with curiosity or disdain, sat rigidly. No smiles. Her mother watched from her wheelchair near the altar, eyes glistening with unspoken apology. Leah wanted to rush to her, to plead one final time, but her legs moved like a puppet's. Her steps echoed, fragile yet fateful, each one hammered like a seal on her soul. Hers. She couldn't see the groom's face. He loomed at the altar, tall and still, back to her. The air around him crackled power, peril, possession. Her heart hammered, threatening to shatter her ribs. When she reached him, the priest's words blurred like a distant storm. Everything drowned in haze. Do you, Leah Williams, take this man? She wanted to scream no, to flee, but her mother's frail hand reached out briefly from behind, a silent beg she couldn't betray. I do, she said softly, voice quivering. And do you, Mr. Yu Unji, take this woman? A pause, endless, the kind that carved deeper. She heard his breath, steady and slow. Then a low voice answered, deep and smooth with an edge of danger. I do. It was the first time she'd heard that voice since that night. Something about it echoed, too deeply, but her mind couldn't piece it together yet. By the power vested in me, the priest intoned, you may now lift the bride's veil. Her breath caught. She felt his fingers on the lace. Slowly, deliberately, he raised it. Light flooded her vision. And then time shattered. Her heart froze, her stomach plummeted. It wasn't a stranger before her. It was him. Hello again, Leah. The man who'd ignited her in the shadows, his dragon tattoo a map she'd traced before he slipped away like smoke. Now he stood as a king of the underworld. Taller, sharper, more perilous, the softness gone, replaced by a lethal grace that didn't fit the memory she'd buried. His jaw was chiseled, hair slicked like midnight, black suit tailored like armor. There was something ruthless in how commanding he'd become. His eyes, those same eyes that had once burned with passion, held no regret, only knowing and a faint, possessive curve of his lips. Long time no see, my secret. The words sliced, sharper than any contract. Her lips parted, voiceless. Her throat scorched. He tilted his head, studying her with a blend of calm and something hidden. She saw the control in his gaze, the predator's thrill when the flame realizes it's ensnared. The guests applauded softly, the sound dissolving into nothing. Leah heard none of it. Not the strings, not the priest, just his voice's echo and her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Her knees buckled slightly, but he steadied her. Her knees felt weak. She stumbled slightly, but he caught her, his grip firm, unyielding, just like that night. The applause swelled around them, oblivious to the storm raging in her chest. How had fate twisted her back to him? To understand the fire that bound them, we rewind 6 months to a time when Leah Williams was just a shadow in Soul's relentless grind, fighting for scraps of survival in a city that never truly claimed her. 6 months earlier, Leah dragged herself through the fluorescent-lit corridors of Seoul General Hospital, the scent of bleach and despair clinging to her like a second skin. By day, she was a cafe waitress, plastering on smiles for hurried customers who barely glanced at her dark curls or Jamaican lilt. By night, she scrubbed floors in the same hospital where her mother lay unconscious, tubes snaking from her frail body like lifelines to a fading hope. Immigration from Jamaica had promised a fresh start after her father's mysterious death, but Seoul had delivered isolation. Instead, a concrete jungle where her accent marked her as forever foreign, her dreams deferred to endless shifts and whispered prejudices. Her mother's illness had struck like a thief in the night, a sudden collapse, doctors murmuring about rare complications from years of overwork. The bills piled up faster than Leah could count. Stacks of envelopes on her tiny apartment table, red-inked demands that mocked her double life. One more late payment, and we'll have to discharge her, the hospital administrator had warned that morning, his voice clipped and impersonal. Leah had nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat, but inside, panic clawed. How could she let her mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to bring them here, slip away in some cold ward? Freedom felt like a cruel joke. Fate had her trapped in a cycle of exhaustion, her Jamaican fire dimmed by the weight of survival. That afternoon, as she wiped down tables at the cafe, her coworker Ji-eun sidled up, eyes gleaming with mischief. "Leah, you look like you haven't slept in days. Need extra cash?" Ji-eun was a local, bubbly and connected, always dangling opportunities Leah couldn't afford to ignore. "There's this special event tonight, a private party. Waitressing gig. Pays triple your weekly wage. Easy work. Fancy crowd." Leah hesitated, wiping sweat from her brow. Private parties in Seoul could mean anything, corporate elites or something shadier. But triple? That could cover a month's bills, buy her mother more time. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Ji-eun shrugged. "No catch. Just show up, serve drinks, smile pretty. You in?" Reluctantly, Leah nodded. Fate, it seemed, was offering a lifeline or a noose. She had no idea the event belonged to the Yu clan, Korea's most feared Mafia family, whispers of their empire echoing through the underworld like thunder drugs. Extortion, shadows that swallowed the unwary whole. That night, Leah stepped into a world far removed from her gritty reality. The venue was a sprawling penthouse atop a gleaming skyscraper, crystal chandeliers casting fractured light over silk-suited guests whose eyes cut like blades. Laughter mingled with low murmurs in Korean, the air thick with expensive cologne and unspoken power. Women in designer gowns dripped with jewels. Men with tattooed knuckles gripped glasses of imported whiskey. Leah felt like an intruder, her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the opulence, her curly hair pinned back but still drawing curious stares. "Foreigner?" she heard one guest whisper, the word stinging like salt in an old wound. She moved through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne, her mind on the payout and her mother's beeping monitors. But one man stood apart, commanding the room without a word. He leaned against a marble pillar, dark suit tailored to perfection, a dragon tattoo curling up his throat like a living shadow. His hair was slicked back, eyes cold and unreadable, piercing, as if he saw through everyone, everything. He wasn't laughing with the others, he observed, a predator in repose. And then his gaze locked on her. Leah felt it like a physical pull, intense, unwavering, as if she were the only person in the glittering chaos. Her cheeks warmed. She looked away, focusing on her tray, but the weight of his stare followed her. Who was he? Some high roller, she guessed, oblivious to how deeply he'd soon entwine with her fate. The night unraveled in an instant. A sharp crack split the air, a gunshot, followed by shattering glass and screams. Chaos erupted. Guests scrambling, tables overturning, the metallic tang of blood mixing with spilled liquor. Leah's heart slammed as she dove behind the bar, curling into the shadows, her breath ragged. Gunfire echoed again. Closer this time, rival intruders, perhaps, crashing the U-clan's domain. She pressed her hands over her ears, whispering prayers from her Jamaican childhood, the fear of being caught in this foreign storm choking her. Freedom? This was survival at its rawest. Footsteps approached, deliberate amid the frenzy. Leah peeked up, her pulse thundering. It was him, the tattooed man, his suit now dusted with glass shards, a faint smear of blood on his cuff. Their eyes locked, electric in the dim light. He didn't flinch at the chaos. He extended a hand. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice low and smooth, carrying an edge of command that sent shivers through her. Before she could respond, before logic could intervene, he pulled her close. His lips crashed into hers, fierce, urgent, tasting of whiskey and danger. What followed was a night of fire, grief, and desire colliding in a haze she couldn't explain. They slipped away from the pandemonium, into a private suite overlooking the city's twinkling lights. His touch was a revelation, gentle yet possessive, tracing her skin as if mapping uncharted territory. The dragon tattoo shifted under her fingers, alive with heat, while he whispered her name like a secret he'd long held. Leah, drowning in her own sorrows, the bills, the isolation, the fear of losing everything let go for the first time. It was passion born of desperation, a connection that felt fated yet forbidden, her Jamaican warmth clashing against his icy Korean reserve. Power and vulnerability tangled. For those stolen hours, she wasn't an outsider, she was alive, claimed, free in the flames. By morning, the suite was empty. He was gone, vanished like smoke, leaving only the ghost of his touch and a hollow ache. Leah dressed in silence, the city awakening below, oblivious to the spark that would soon ignite her world anew. Little did she know, that night had sealed her in the U-clan's web, fate's cruel prelude to the altar where she now stood, veil lifted, staring into the eyes of her stranger husband. Little did she know, that night had sealed her in the U-clan's web, fate's cruel prelude to the altar where she now stood, veil lifted, staring into the eyes of her stranger husband. But to grasp how the shadows closed in, we fast forward from that empty morning after. 2 months later, when Leah's fragile world shattered once more, pulling her deeper into a fate she couldn't outrun. The rain-slicked streets of Seoul gleamed under sodium lights as Leah trudged home from another double shift, her bones aching from the cafe's endless bustle and the hospital's sterile grind. 2 months had blurred by since that fiery night, the stranger's touch a fading echo, buried under the grind of survival. She'd convinced herself it was a one-off escape, a spark in the dark that meant nothing. But fate, that relentless tide, had other plans. Her apartment building loomed ahead, a crumbling relic in a gentrifying neighborhood, its faded paint a mirror to her own worn spirit. As she fumbled for her keys, a notice fluttered on the door. Building sold. Eviction, in 30 days. Her stomach dropped. The landlord hadn't even bothered to call, just a cold sheet of paper, sealing her displacement like a verdict. Where would she go? With her mother still comatose, tubes and machines her only companions, Leah couldn't afford this blow. As a Jamaican immigrant, she was already adrift in this city of glass towers and whispered exclusions now. Homelessness loomed like another chain on her freedom. The next evening, as she left the hospital, the shadows lengthened into something more sinister. A burly man in a cheap leather jacket stepped from the alley, blocking her path. His face was scarred, eyes like chipped flint, and he clutched a crumpled contract that reeked of stale smoke. "Leah Williams?" His voice was a gravelly sneer, thick with menace. She froze, heart pounding, the kind of instinct honed from years as an outsider, always glancing over her shoulder. "Who's asking?" He thrust the paper forward. "Your old man owed us big. Time to pay up." Her father? The man who'd vanished years ago, leaving her and her mother to scrape by in this foreign land? She snatched the contract, scanning the faded ink, loans, signatures, sums that made her vision blur. "This isn't mine," she whispered, voice trembling. "He's dead. Gone." The loan shark laughed, a wet, mocking bark that echoed off the hospital walls. "Debts don't die, sweetheart. Your daddy drove for the U Syndicate, ferried their goods, their secrets, until he got sticky fingers, accused of skimming their cash, vanished like a ghost. Now, the bill falls to you." Leah's world tilted. The U-clan, those whispered nightmares of Seoul's underbelly, kings of crime who bent the city to their will. Her father, a simple immigrant chasing stability, tangled in their web. It explained his sudden disappearance. The hushed stories her mother never fully told. But why her? "I don't have money," she begged, tears stinging as rain began to fall. "Please, more time. My mother, she's inside, fighting for her life. I'll work extra shifts. Anything." The shark's grin widened, predatory. "Begging? Cute. But there's another way to pay." His eyes raked over her, making her skin crawl. "The boss has an offer. Clean slate if you play nice." Fate's cruelty twisted tighter. She was no longer just surviving, she was prey. The summons came the next day. A black envelope slipped under her door, sealed with a dragon emblem that chilled her blood. "Present yourself at the estate. Tonight. No choice. No escape." Leah arrived at the marble fortress outside Seoul as dusk fell, the gates parting like jaws. The estate sprawled like a palace of secrets, ivory columns, manicured gardens hiding armed guards, the air thick with the scent of orchids and veiled threats. Inside, a stern-faced advisor led her to a dimly lit study, where polished wood gleamed under low lights. "Sit," he commanded, sliding a new contract across the desk. Her blood ran cold as she read. "Marriage to Yu Eunji, heir to the syndicate. In exchange, all debts forgiven. Your family's burdens lifted. Marry him?" The cold air she'd never met, binding her life to the very shadows that had claimed her father? "No," she spat, shoving the paper back. "I'm not some commodity. This is insane. I refuse." The advisor's smile was thin, unyielding. "Refuse, and your mother's care ends. Your home? Gone. The Yu clan doesn't ask twice." Power's grip tightened. Her freedom, already fragile in this hierarchical world, slipped further away. She stormed back to the hospital, fury and fear warring in her chest. But there, taped crudely to her mother's bed like a final taunt, was the eviction notice official, merciless, threatening discharge if payments lapsed. Her mother lay still, chest rising faintly, a living reminder of everything Leah had fought to protect. The room spun. Memories flooded of Jamaica's sun-warmed shores, her mother's laughter before illness stole it. The dreams they'd chased to Korea only to find isolation and debt. How could she let this woman fade? Her will, forged in fire, collapsed under the weight. Tears blurred her vision as she signed the contract in the advisor's waiting car, the pen heavy as a shackle. Her life stopped being hers, traded for survival, bound to a stranger in a world of deceit and danger. Little did she know, the heir waiting at the altar was no stranger at all, but the flame from her past, ready to consume her anew. Little did she know, the heir waiting at the altar was no stranger at all, but the flame from her past, ready to consume her anew. The days after signing blurred into a haze of dread, fate's noose tightening until the dawn of reckoning arrived, pulling Leah from her fragile existence into a ceremony that would redefine her chains. Dawn broke over Seoul like a reluctant confession, pale light filtering through the smog as two black cars purred to a stop outside her soon-to-be evicted apartment. The engines hummed low, ominous, like the heartbeat of the syndicate itself. Men in crisp suits emerged, their faces masks of stoic efficiency, no words, no greetings, just silent escorts flanking her like shadows. Leah stepped out, her body numb, clad in a gown they'd delivered the night before. Ivory silk that whispered against her skin, heavy with embroidery that felt more like armor than elegance. She clutched a small bouquet of white lilies, their scent cloying, a mockery of purity in this forced union. Her freedom? It had evaporated with that signature. Now, she was chattel in a game of power, her Jamaican roots a distant echo in this cold Korean dawn. The men guided her into the car without a glance, the door sealing with a finality that echoed in her chest. As they sped toward the outskirts, Leah stared out at the blurring city, neon signs fading, crowds awakening to lives unbound by Mafia debts. How had she become this? A bride bartered for survival, her mother's frail hope the price of her surrender. The venue unfolded like a dream laced with nightmares. A sprawling estate perched on Seoul's edge, its marble halls breathtaking in their opulence. White roses cascaded from arches, their petals soft as whispers, while crystal chandeliers dangled like frozen tears, casting prisms of light over polished floors. But beneath the elegance lurked danger guards with concealed weapons patrolled the perimeter, their eyes scanning for threats, the air thick with the undercurrent of power plays and veiled alliances. It was beauty dressed as peril, a facade for the Yu clan's iron grip. Leah's mother waited inside, wheeled in from the hospital, her face gaunt and pale, eyes glistening with a mix of guilt and fragile pride. She reached out a trembling hand as Leah passed, whispering, "Be strong, my girl," her voice a threadbare echo of Jamaican warmth in this sterile grandeur. Leah could barely feel her legs, each step a battle against the vertigo of fear, her knees threatening to buckle, her pulse a frantic drumbeat. How could she walk into this? Fate had stripped her agency, leaving her a pawn in a world that viewed her outsider status as both novelty and weakness. The guests filled the hall, a select assembly of cold, powerful men and women, syndicate allies in tailored suits and gowns that screamed inherited wealth. They stared with polite curiosity, their expressions a blend of amusement and disdain, as if she were an exotic exhibit. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. An immigrant bride? How quaint, straight from the islands to the heir's bed. The heir's punishment, no doubt tying him to a debtor's daughter to teach humility. The words stung, amplifying her isolation. In this hierarchical underworld, her Jamaican heritage marked her as lesser, a foreigner unfit for their gilded cage. Leah swallowed the bile rising in her throat, forcing her trembling body forward, the aisle stretching like a gauntlet. White petals crunched under her heels, the orchestral strings swelling in mocking harmony. Each step echoed her inner turmoil, love twisted by coercion, freedom sacrificed for survival. She was no longer Leah Williams, fighter and dreamer. She was the syndicate's bride, bound by sins not her own. At the altar, the groom stood tall, his back to her, radiating quiet authority that silenced the room. His silhouette was commanding, broad shoulders in a black suit, hair slicked with precision, the faint outline of a tattoo peeking above his collar. He didn't turn immediately, letting the tension build, as if savoring her approach. Leah's breath hitched. Something about his stance stirred a buried memory, a flicker of that chaotic night. When he finally turned, her breath froze solid in her chest. The same piercing eyes, dark and unreadable, locking onto hers with possessive intensity. The same dragon tattoo curling up his throat, a black ink serpent that had once danced under her touch. It was him, the man she'd given her heart and innocence to months ago. In that whirlwind of grief and fire, shock rooted her in place. How could fate be this cruel, weaving her one reckless escape into this nightmare union? He said nothing, his lips a firm line, but his gaze spoke volumes, looking at her like he already owned her, like the contract was merely formality in a game he'd long been playing. Power radiated from him, clashing with the vulnerability she'd glimpsed that night. Now, he was the heir, cold and commanding, her captor in silk. The priest's words droned on, vows blurring into white noise. But Leah's world narrowed to him, to the man who'd vanished at dawn, only to re-emerge as her destiny's blade. When the moment came to lift the veil, his fingers brushed the lace with deliberate slowness, drawing out the agony. The fabric rose, light flooding her vision, and everything inside her broke shattered like glass under the weight of recognition, betrayal, and the inescapable duality of their bond. Fate had not just bound her. It had ignited her past to burn her future. Fate had not just bound her. It had ignited her past to burn her future. The ceremony dissolved into a blur of forced smiles and hollow toasts. The guests' applause a distant roar as Leah was whisked away from the altar, her hand in his, a touch that seared like a brand. But the true breaking came later, in the cold hush of their wedding night, where the flames of recognition turned to ash, leaving her adrift in a union forged from shadows. The suite was a cavern of luxury, perched high in the yew estate, its king-sized bed an expanse too vast for one fractured soul. Leah sat at its edge, her body swathed in silk lingerie that clung like a shroud ivory, remnants of the gown she'd shed like a skin. The room smelled of polished wood and faint jasmine, but the air felt frigid, heavy with unspoken dread. Her mind spiraled in endless loops, those eyes at the altar, the dragon tattoo that had once been her secret map, now a symbol of her captivity. How had that night of reckless fire led here? As a Jamaican woman thrust into Korea's unforgiving underworld, she felt more isolated than ever, her cultural warmth extinguished in this mansion of cold hierarchies, where love twisted into power's cruel game. Fate had stolen her freedom. Now, it mocked her with a husband who was both stranger and specter. She hugged her knees, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks, the weight of the ring on her finger a constant reminder of her surrender. The door clicked open, and he entered Unji, her stranger husband, the heir whose name now chained her. His shirt was unbuttoned halfway, revealing the inked dragon curling across his chest, shifting with every measured breath like a living omen. A cigarette dangled between his fingers, smoke curling lazily upward, filling the room with its acrid haze. He moved with predatory grace, eyes scanning her as if assessing a possession. No words at first. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaling a slow plume that veiled his face. Leah's pulse quickened, memories flooded, unbidden. His touch that night, fierce and consuming, like fire against her skin. Now, it loomed as a silent burn, a promise unfulfilled in this icy void. She couldn't hold back. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice cracking, laced with the lilt of her Jamaican roots that felt so out of place here. He took a drag, exhaling smoke that dissipated like forgotten dreams. "You signed the contract." His tone was detached, a smooth blade clinical, as if their union were just another syndicate deal. But his gaze lingered too long, tracing the curve of her neck, the tremble in her hands. It betrayed a flicker of something deeper hunger, perhaps, or recognition of the fire they'd once shared. She remembered how his touch had felt like liberation, a blaze that thawed her grief. Now, it burned in silence, reduced to this power imbalance where he held all the cards, and she was merely the outsider bride, her dignity a casualty of fate's cruel redemption. He stubbed out the cigarette, the ember dying like her hopes, and turned away, leaving her in the cold expanse. The dragon on his skin a taunting reminder of what could have been. Days bled into one another, each a lesson in ghostly existence within the mansion's labyrinth of secrets. The estate was a fortress of marble and glass, rooms echoing with hidden whispers, cameras blinking from every corner, their red lights following her every move like unblinking eyes. Leah wandered its halls like a specter, her footsteps muffled on Persian rugs, the staff averting their gazes as if she were a curse. Maids scurried away when she approached. Guards nodded curtly but offered no warmth. Whispers trailed her. The foreign wife debtor's blood. Her Jamaican heritage amplified the isolation. In this world of rigid Korean traditions and Mafia codes, she was an anomaly, her vibrant spirit caged in luxury that felt like punishment. Meals arrived on silver trays, but she ate alone, the silence a constant companion. Unji was a ghost himself, appearing briefly, his presence a storm cloud of quiet authority, their interactions clipped and distant. Power clashed with her fight for dignity. Love, if it had ever sparked, now simmered in veiled tension, redemption a distant mirage. Then one night, insomnia drove her to prowl. The mansion's shadows seemed alive, moonlight slanting through windows like accusations. She slipped into his study, drawn by curiosity or defiance, rifling through drawers with trembling hands. Papers, keys, a hidden compartment, and there, a photo, grainy, but unmistakable, a surveillance shot of her, taken months before their fateful encounter. At the cafe, walking to the hospital, her face captured in unwitting vulnerability. Her breath hitched. The implications crashed like waves. He'd known her all along, tracked her, perhaps orchestrated that night. Fate's web tightened. She wasn't a chance flame but a calculated pawn in his game of power and secrets. Everything inside her fractured anew. What redemption could come from such deception? Whew, that tension is building. Will Leah break free or fall deeper? If this is hitting home, hit that like button and subscribe for more episodes in the Korean Dynasty series. Drop a comment. What would you do in Leah's shoes? And don't forget to share with a friend who loves dramatic twists. Everything inside her fractured anew. What redemption could come from such deception? The photo trembled in Leah's hands, a tangible proof of Eunji's calculated gaze. But before she could confront the shadows of her discovery, new storms brewed in the mansion's depths. Fate, ever the cruel weaver, introduced a venomous thread. A rival who saw Leah not as a wife, but as an intruder to be eradicated. It began at a syndicate gathering, a lavish affair in the estate's grand ballroom where crystal glasses clinked like fragile alliances, and the air hummed with veiled negotiations. Leah stood on the periphery, her gown a borrowed elegance that couldn't mask her outsider status, her dark curls and Jamaican warmth a stark contrast to the polished Korean elite. Whispers followed her, as always. The foreign bride, how long until she breaks? She clutched her champagne flute, fighting the isolation that gnawed at her freedom, when a woman approached like a storm cloud in diamonds and fury. Minseo Kang, daughter of a rival Mafia family, her beauty sharp as a blade, high cheekbones, lips painted crimson, eyes glittering with malice. She circled Leah like a predator, her perfume a cloying mix of jasmine and spite. Leaning in close, Minseo's voice dripped venom, a whisper meant only for Leah's ear. "You think he loves you? You're just a debt payment, a pretty little immigrant to warm his bed until he tires of the novelty." The words sliced deep, amplifying Leah's displacement. In this world of inherited power, she was reduced to collateral, her dignity a pawn in games of legacy and betrayal. Mincio pulled back with a saccharine smile, leaving Leah frozen, the room's opulence suddenly suffocating. The threats escalated like a gathering tempest, invading the fragile sanctuary of her daily ghosting. Notes appeared first, slipped under her door or tucked into her vanity. Leave before you're erased. Outsiders don't belong. Scrawled in elegant script, they carried the scent of Mincio's perfume, a taunt that made Leah's skin crawl. Then her phone hacked messages from unknown numbers flooding in at midnight. Photos of her sleeping, taken from impossible angles, captions reading "Watching you break." Her clothes were next. Gowns slashed in her wardrobe, silk ribbons of her Jamaican heritage beads and fabrics from home torn to shreds, left in mocking piles on her bed. Each violation chipped at her resolve, turning the mansion into a cage of paranoia. As a woman displaced in this cold hierarchy, Leah felt her freedom erode further. Love, if it existed here, was poisoned by power's shadows. Redemption, a distant hope amid the fear. She confided fragments to the staff, but they averted their eyes. Murmuring excuses, loyalty to the syndicate ran deeper than pity for an outsider bride. Unji's response was enigma that frayed her nerves. He seemed indifferent at first, dismissing her reports with a curt nod during rare dinners, his eyes distant as he reviewed syndicate ledgers. "It's handled," he'd say, voice smooth but detached, retreating to his study with a cigarette's glow. Yet, there were hints of silent protection, guards appearing unbidden when she wandered the grounds, the notes vanishing as quickly as they came. Mincio's visits curtailed without explanation. Was it care or control? She couldn't tell. His mask of authority hid the man from that fiery night, leaving her to question if their bond was fate's gift or curse. The duality burned, power clashing with her yearning for truth, love simmering beneath indifference. The confrontation erupted one stormy evening, rain lashing the windows like accusations. Leah cornered him in the study, the hacked phone clutched in her hand, fury overriding fear. "This has to stop," she demanded, her voice steady despite the tremble. "Mincio, her threats, the notes, the slashes. You act like it's nothing." Unji set down his glass, his mask cracking for the first time, eyes flashing with something raw, unguarded. "You don't understand what you've stepped into," he growled, rising to tower over her, the dragon tattoo pulsing with his quickened breath. "Then make me understand," she shot back, stepping closer, her Jamaican fire igniting against his icy reserve. "I'm your wife, not some secret you spy on." His hand slammed the wall beside her head, the impact echoing like thunder, pinning her in place without touch. The air crackled, charged with unspoken history. "You were never supposed to be here," he snarled, voice low and frayed, his breath warm against her skin. But his eyes, those piercing depths, betrayed the storm within. Fury mingling with longing, the memory of their night surfacing like a forbidden tide. Their argument twisted, evolving into something primal, fury and longing colliding in the dark. He gripped her arms, not in anger but desperation, pulling her close as rain hammered outside. Lips met in a clash of fire and shadow, passion reclaiming what deception had stolen. In that moment, power yielded to vulnerability, fate's chains loosening just enough for redemption's whisper. But as they tangled in the shadows, Leah wondered, was this love, or just another layer of the trap? But as they tangled in the shadows, Leah wondered, was this love, or just another layer of the trap? The passion faded with the storm, leaving her in a tangle of silk sheets and unresolved doubts. Unji's touch, a fleeting warmth that couldn't erase the chill of secrets. Days later, suspicion gnawed like an unhealed wound, driving her back to the heart of his deceptions. Fate's web demanded truth, and Leah, ever the fighter, refused to remain blind in this gilded prison. Under the cover of midnight, with rain still pattering against the estate's windows like insistent whispers, Leah slipped from their bed. Unji slept soundly, his dragon tattoo a dark silhouette in the moonlight. But she couldn't rest, not with Mincio's threats lingering and the photo's betrayal burning in her memory. Barefoot, she padded through the mansion's labyrinthine halls, her Jamaican warmth a stark contrast to the cold marble underfoot. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and lingering smoke, cameras whirring softly overhead like judgmental eyes. As an outsider in this hierarchical underworld, she felt the weight of displacement acutely, every shadow a reminder that she was a foreigner navigating a world built on blood ties and buried sins. Freedom felt like a stolen breath. Sneaking into his office again was her act of defiance, a reclaiming of agency in a marriage forged from lies. The door creaked open, and she froze, heart pounding, before slipping inside. Moonlight slanted through the blinds, illuminating the desk where secrets festered. She rifled through drawers with trembling hands, her pulse of frantic rhythm, papers rustling like dry leaves, files spilling their forbidden contents. There, a dossier thick with surveillance, stamped with the U-Clan's dragon seal. Photos of her father, grainy and faded, him behind the wheel of a syndicate car, eyes haunted, dates aligning with his disappearance. Reports on her family, her mother's immigration records from Jamaica, hospital bills annotated with cold calculations. And worst, timelines of her own movements, snapshots from before that chaotic night, capturing her at the cafe, walking Seoul's streets, even intimate moments alone in her apartment, notes scrawled in Unji's precise hand, suspected link to missing funds, father's theft leverage through daughter. The truth hit like lightning, electrifying her veins with betrayal. Unji had known her all along, followed her, suspecting her father's connection to the syndicate's stolen fortune. That passionate encounter wasn't chance. It was a calculated step in his game, her grief and desire mere tools in his pursuit of answers. Power's duality crushed her. Love twisted into manipulation, fate mocking her with a husband who'd orchestrated her fall. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the files, the room spinning. How could redemption emerge from such calculated cruelty? She didn't wait for dawn. Storming back to their suite, files in hand, Leah burst through the door, the papers scattering like accusations. Unji stirred, sitting up with a predator's alertness, his eyes narrowing in the dim light. "What is this?" she demanded, voice breaking but fierce, thrusting a photo at him, her face, captured in unwitting vulnerability. "You knew me before that night. You followed me." The words echoed her isolation. A Jamaican woman ensnared in Korea's shadows, her trust shattered by a man who'd wielded power like a weapon. He rose slowly, shirtless, the dragon tattoo coiling as if alive. For a moment, silence stretched, his gaze flickering with something unreadable: regret? Defiance? Then, he didn't deny it. "I used you," he admitted, voice hollow, stripped of its usual command, echoing in the vast room like a confession from the depths. The admission hung heavy, confirming her worst fears. Their fire had been kindled on lies, her innocence a pawn in his hunt for the missing funds tied to her father's vanishing. Rage surged, hot and unbridled, fate's chains snapping in that instant. Her hand flew, the slap echoing through the marble hall like a gunshot, the impact stinging her palm as much as his cheek. He didn't flinch, didn't retaliate. Instead, he touched the reddening mark, eyes locking onto hers with raw intensity. "You were the only thing that wasn't supposed to matter," he said softly, voice fraying at the edges, a crack in his armored facade. The words carried a vulnerability that pierced her power, yielding to the unintended pull of their connection, love's duality surfacing amid the pain. Her tears fell then, hot and unrelenting, tracing paths down her cheeks as the files crumpled in her grip. But so did her anger, dissolving into something darker, understanding. He hadn't planned the spark between them. Fate had twisted his scheme into something real, binding them in redemption's fragile thread. Yet in that marble hall, with truth laid bare, Leah wondered if understanding was enough, or if it would only deepen the trap. Yet in that marble hall, with truth laid bare, Leah wondered if understanding was enough, or if it would only deepen the trap. The fragile truce of their confrontation lingered like a storm's aftermath. But fate, ever merciless, had one final twist in store. As shadows lengthened in the estate, betrayal slithered closer, forcing Leah to confront the deadly web that bound her not just to Unji, but to a legacy of blood and vengeance. It unfolded under the cover of a moonless night, the mansion's halls whispering with secrets as Leah wandered restlessly, her mind a whirlwind of half-truths and lingering touches. Sleep evaded her, the weight of Unji's admission pressing like a stone on her chest. Drawn by muffled voices from a secluded wing, usually off-limits to her outsider presence, she crept closer, her bare feet silent on the cool marble. Cultural displacement amplified her caution. As a Jamaican woman in this fortress of Korean legacies, she was forever the intruder, her every step a risk in a world where power silenced the weak. Peering through a cracked door to a dimly lit conference room, she froze. There, bathed in the glow of a single lamp, sat Minseo's father, Kang Ji-hoon, patriarch of a rival syndicate, his face etched with ruthless ambition. Beside him, a burly bodyguard nodded deferentially, maps and documents strewn across the table like battle plans. Leah pressed against the wall, heart thundering, straining to catch their words. The airs weakened. Kang snarled, voice low and venomous. That marriage contract? Perfect bait. We use the girl, the debtor's daughter, to draw him out. Lure him to the old warehouse under pretense of a truce meeting. One shot, and the U empire crumbles. The bodyguard grunted agreement, tracing a finger over a blueprint. Her presence ensures he comes alone, protective of his new toy. We end him. Blame it on internal rivals. The contract's fine print gives us leverage over their assets. Leah's blood iced. They were plotting Unji's assassination, wielding her as the lure, her forced union reduced to a trap in their power play. Fate's cruelty struck anew. She, the outsider bride, was the unwitting key to his downfall. Her freedom and love entangled in a deadly game of syndicates and sins. Horror clawed at her throat. She had to warn him, to shatter this betrayal before it consumed them both. She bolted, the files from earlier forgotten in her panic, tearing through the mansion's corridors as rain began to lash the windows like furious accusations. Bursting into the storm outside, she ran barefoot across the slick grounds, her nightdress tearing on thorns and gravel, clinging to her skin like a sodden shroud. The downpour soaked her through, curls matted and heavy, the cold biting into her bones, a Jamaican fire doused in Korea's relentless tempest. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the estate's gates ahead, guards scattering in confusion. Her lungs burned, feet bleeding on the jagged path, but she pushed on fate's chains, propelling her toward redemption or ruin. At the gates, she screamed his name into the night. Unji! The word ripped from her throat, raw and desperate, echoing over the thunder. Gunfire erupted, then a sharp barrage from the shadows, bullets whizzing like vengeful spirits. Chaos exploded, guards shouting, alarms blaring, the storm turning the grounds into a battlefield. Unji appeared from the darkness, racing toward her with wild urgency, his shirt plastered by rain, dragon tattoo glistening like a beacon. "Leah!" he roared, spotting the ambush too late. A sniper's shot rang out, aimed true for his heart, but he lunged, shielding her with his body. The impact threw them both to the mud, his frame crumpling over hers as pain ripped through him. Blood bloomed hot and crimson, staining her torn wedding gown, ivory silk turning scarlet, a macabre echo of their union's twisted passion. Leah gasped, rolling him off gently, her hands pressing futilely against the wound, rain diluting the red rivers streaming from his chest. "No," she sobbed, the storm drowning her cries, her outsider grief clashing against the syndicate's violent reality. Power had yielded to love's fragile shield. In this moment, he was no captor, but her protector, fate redeeming itself in blood. He gripped her hand weakly, fingers intertwining with desperate strength, his eyes those piercing depths locking onto hers amid the chaos. "Now you finally know why I chose you," he whispered, voice ragged, blood flecking his lips. The words carried layers, not just deception, but a deeper truth. His surveillance born of suspicion, evolving into an unintended salvation. Her presence the one light in his shadowed empire. Sirens wailed in the distance, cutting through the rain like a lament, but they seemed worlds away. Leah sobbed over him, cradling his head in her lap. The man she thought was her captor now dying in her arms, fate's cruel duality laid bare. Love and pain entwined in redemption's final breath. As his grip slackened, she pressed her forehead to his, whispering prayers from her Jamaican roots, wondering if freedom could ever rise from such profound loss. As his grip slackened, she pressed her forehead to his, whispering prayers from her Jamaican roots, wondering if freedom could ever rise from such profound loss. The sirens grew louder, piercing the storm's fury as guards swarmed, pulling them from the mud. Unji's bloodied form lifted onto a stretcher, Leah clinging desperately as ambulances raced them through the rain-slicked night. Fate's cruel hand had spared them the immediate kill, but redemption hung by a thread, leading to a sterile battlefield where love and power would face their final reckoning. The hospital room was a stark cocoon of white light and incessant beeping, machines humming like mechanical sentinels monitoring the fragile line between life and oblivion. Antiseptic scents mingled with the metallic tang of blood, the fluorescent glow casting harsh shadows on Unji's motionless form. He lay pale and still on the bed, tubes snaking from his arms, bandages swathing the wound that had nearly claimed him, a bullet meant for his heart, diverted only by his sacrificial lunge. Leah clung to his hand, her fingers intertwined with his, refusing to let go even as doctors murmured grave updates in clipped Korean. Her torn, blood-stained gown had been replaced with a hospital blanket, but the crimson stains lingered in her mind, a macabre testament to their twisted bond. As a Jamaican woman displaced in this cold, hierarchical world, she felt the isolation acutely, The nurse's sympathetic glances couldn't bridge the chasm of her outsider grief. Her prayers a blend of island rhythms and desperate pleas. Fate had bound her to this man-captor, lover, enigma, and now, in this white-lit limbo, power yielded to vulnerability. Love's duality laid bare in the beeps of a heart monitor. Tears streamed down her face, hot against the chill of the room, as she whispered through the sobs, her voice a fragile thread. "You said you didn't remember that night, but I did, every second." The words evoked their stolen passion, the fire of grief and desire, his dragon tattoo alive under her touch, a memory that had ignited her world only to burn it down. He exhaled weakly, a ragged breath that stirred the air, his eyes flickering open those piercing depths, dimmed but defiant, locking onto hers with fading intensity. The monitor's rhythm stuttered, alarms beginning to whine, but he squeezed her hand, mustering the strength for one final truth. "You were never my mistake," he murmured, voice hollow yet laced with raw sincerity, a confession that pierced the veil of deception. In that moment, redemption flickered, fate's chains transforming into a bridge. His choice of her not just leverage, but an unintended salvation. Love triumphing over power's shadows even as life ebbed. Leah's heart shattered, the words a balm and a blade, affirming the duality that had defined them, a Jamaican outsider and a Korean heir, bound by sins and sparks neither had foreseen. The monitor flatlined, then a piercing, unbroken tone that sliced through the room like fate's final decree. Nurses rushed in, defibrillators charging, but Leah knew. She felt the life slip from his grip, his hand going limp in hers. Sobs racked her body as she pressed her forehead to his chest, the warmth fading beneath her touch, the dragon tattoo now still, a permanent etch in her memory. The ring symbol of their coerced union slipped from her finger, clattering to the floor with a hollow ring, rolling into the shadows like a discarded chain. Freedom, bittersweet, washed over her amid the grief. The man she'd thought was her captor had become her savior, redeeming their twisted love in death's embrace. Doctors pulled her away gently, but the white light blurred through her tears, the beep silenced, leaving only the echo of his words and the ache of what could have been. Months later, Leah stood on a hill overlooking Seoul, the sprawling city that had broken her with its shadows and rebuilt her in fire. The skyline glittered below, a tapestry of neon and steel, towers piercing the sky like the ambitions that had ensnared her. Wind tousled her curls, carrying the faint scent of rain and renewal, her Jamaican roots grounding her amid the foreign horizon. The dragon tattoo remained burned in her memory, a symbol not of captivity, but of the passion that had awakened her strength, fate's cruel gift transforming pain into purpose. She had survived the underworld's grip, her mother's care secured in the aftermath, but the scars lingered, a testament to love's power over even the darkest deceptions. With a deep breath, she turned away, whispering to the wind, "I married my past to save my future." The words carried her forward, steps light with hard-won freedom, as the city faded behind her. Fade out. And there you have it, the flames of fate can burn or redeem. If this story left you breathless, subscribe now for more Korean dynasty adventures, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Comment your favorite twist below and where you're watching from. Oh, and click on the next video popping up on your screen. It's another Mafia romance you won't want to miss. Thanks for joining the Korean dynasty.